We are live. We are live. What is up? What is up, everybody? Austin prechtelevate Performance, coming at you live today on the podcast with my absolutely amazing client, Makaila. She is a absolute badass, honestly, in so many ways. And we've been, working together for quite some time now. And she's just made some incredible progress on her journey. And so I figured it was about damn time to get her on the podcast. It took a little bit. It took a little bit of reoccurring encouragement, but we're here, we're making it happen, and I'm just excited to have you on today. So say what's up, say hi, let's give the audience a little bit of a background on who you are, and just kind of go from there.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, I'm Makaila. So I will be 33 here at the end of the month. I started working with Austin in July of last year.
That's crazy, it's been that long.
I do work from home, so pretty sedentary lifestyle. I live within the confines of my home most of the time. What else?
As far as before, I guess so. Like for me, and my kind of like one of my questions that I had for you is far as before we started working together, kind of in terms of like your journey and everything like that. Like what were you kind of like struggling with for the most part? I know you mentioned just a little bit ago, sedentary work and things like that. But for you and your fitness journey, kind of like what were your goals, or what did you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so I had gone through some life stresses that really packed on the pounds for me. I got to a number that I have never seen before. I didn't step on the scale for quite some time after that because I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
And I've always been up and down on that little roller coaster. So about 10 to 15 is usually like my window that I can accomplish at a time.
Yeah.
But there's so much misinformation out there, and I really just needed to know like what was right versus what was total BS.
Yeah.
And if I have the right information, I can take it and run with it and do it.
Yeah.
So really, that was my goal to work with you, is get the right information. And I knew you had it because I saw Jen rocking her journey, and
Yep.
if you can do it, we can do it. So
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. And you're right. I mean, there's a lot of like misinformation there, especially like in the health and fitness space. It's just like it's kind of wild, wild west out there a little bit, and not in like the fun, like cool way. It's like it's in the you might mess yourself up kind of way, because like it's we're a lot of that info, it's like going to impact our health and our bodies. And so like you want to have like the right information to be able to implement. And that is one thing I want to say, like as far as like us working together and everything like that, like from the beginning, I would say like everybody's got their kind of like learning period as they're kind of getting into it and everything like that. But like I mean, once you like learned what you needed to learn, like you were very good at, like that's something that I've noticed, like you're very good at like implementing and being like a self-starter in a lot of ways, which I think is like a really important trait. It's like that for somebody to have like long-term success with this, and you've got that. Like I would be like, okay, do this, and you'd be like, okay, cool. Like now, and even like you were like even like thinking steps ahead too. You were like, okay, so like after I'm done with this, like what's the next thing that I need to do? Can you teach me about this? Like because I know like there's like a timeline or like a date that something was coming up, and you're like I want to be able to learn about this before this like set period of time. I was like, okay, cool, yeah. Like if you want to learn, let's learn. Like I just think that that's a an important trait that not enough people have coming into a fitness journey. Is just like a willingness to learn, and then being like go getter enough to actually like implement the information, because information without implementation is bullshit. So it's so but yeah, that's awesome. And so for you, whenever you were, kind of like, like I'll use your words, like, after kind of like packing on the pounds or whatever during that, stressful period of time, like how is that kind of like negatively like impacting kind of like where you were at that time? Like what like, I guess, what kind of made you want to like make the change finally?
well, my life situation changed a little bit, but so before we started working together, I had lost a little bit of weight, but again, I kind of hit that 15-pound mark on my own, where you start second guessing yourself. Like, is this actually working? Should I do something else?
Yeah.
Um, and I think I just hit that. And like I said, I was watching Jen and I said, this is what we're going to do. And we're going with it. So it was just
Yeah.
part of a spur of the moment, like we're doing it and we're doing it now.
Yeah, I know. And I was gonna say too, like, I mean, you weren't really like a hard sell on like the program or anything like that. You were like, I see the proof in the pudding with my friend, and I want in. And it was just like, all right, let's do this. And you were like, okay, let's do this. And so it was very just like from the get go, a very like I feel like I don't know, you knew it was something that you wanted to do, and you had that kind of like clarity on like that I want to make this happen, and lo and behold we did, and you've been freaking like absolutely crushing it. I think it's funny because like oftentimes like sometimes people have just a hesitation to work with either a coach in general, or especially like in the online space. It's like, oh, like that kind of adds another like element to it where you're of uncertainty for a lot of people. But for you, it's just like you've always been kind of like, ever since we were working together, just like a taking fast action kind of person, I've noticed. And so, and again, I think that's like, there's a trend that I notice with my clients that like do the best, like make the most progress and see the long, like the biggest shifts in their lifestyle and in their health and fitness. And like that's one of them for sure. And like you've definitely been like embodying like a lot of the, not to brag on you, but I mean I think we have a good reason to brag, especially on this one. So so for you, we've been working together for like almost a year now, and we've had kind of like, we've been kind of off and on here and there too, just because you're like, well, hey, I know I got what I want, and I'm going to go implement it, and I'll come back if I need you. And that's just kind of how it's been, whenever we've hit different like levels or plateaus or things like that. And so it's been really cool in that way. But we've been working together, like I said, like kind of like off and on since like almost a year now, which is pretty crazy. And since then, so like what sort of results have we been able to accomplish together, whether that's mindset or like physically or your health, like things like that? What have we been able to do? Because I want you to brag on yourself, because you're like, you are not that kind of person, really. Like you don't do that very often, and I want you to have an opportunity to share what you've accomplished.
Oh boy. So when we started, I didn't really have like a set goal or really in mind. I just knew the direction I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So since then, I have set a goal of 145, which is like drops me into a healthy by
Mhm.
standard BMI, which will be my first goal. And we are 3 pounds away from that.
Yes, we are.
So I'm down officially a little over 33 pounds, I
Yep.
think. So in
Yep.
under a year. Um, I have a little bit more to go now that I've almost reached it. So I have a new goal in mind. So we'll push
It's
towards
pretty exciting. I mean, like not only have you like, but also like on top of like the weight loss side of things, but also just like the body recomp, like the like, for those of you guys that don't know, like she posted a little bit of a like before and after of her journey so far, and just like the amount of like muscle definition and the amount of muscle that you've been able to put on, because we've been doing strength training exercises, and we've been doing those sorts of things. Like it definitely makes a big difference between just straight up losing weight versus prioritizing that fat loss and maintaining, and also building muscle along the way. I think it can make a big difference. And I mean, we're at like a really good place right now, like especially because we reverse dieted really well, and it's been just like pretty damn like smooth sailing for the most part. I mean, like you've had the plan, you've done the plan and did the work, and now we're like getting the results because of it. It's just kind of funny how that works, right? Like it's almost as if you have a good plan and you put the time in, you're gonna get the results. And like 33 pounds down is like insanely good progress. And like it's just like again, that before and after was just like whenever I was like scrolling my Facebook, I was like, holy shit! Like I was like, let's go! Like that's awesome. And so yeah, and so for you, outside of your you know fitness goals and just kind of like the body recomp and things like that, what's like the biggest change that you've seen in your life so far, whether that's like mindset or just kind of in your day to day that you notice? Because I know that you enjoy riding your horse, and so that, I mean, do you feel like that's helped too to some degree?
well, I sold my horse not too long ago. So
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
I'm in between horses. So I can't speak to that at the moment.
Okay, gotcha.
I did pick up some cardio for that reason, though. I do team sorting, so it's like short jogs of high intensity type things.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to come out of the pen after 90 seconds, like gasping for air anymore.
Yeah.
So I picked up cardio for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Um, but the mindset, I mean, the whole focus on the step, not the staircase, like is
Mm.
huge. Like you don't really
Mm.
realize the like impact it really has on you until you are there. Like,
Yeah.
sure, I would have loved to lose the 30 pounds in 6 months, but here we
Yeah.
are at a year, and I could care less that it took me a year. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just finally here, and it feels good. So,
I freaking love that. And I love that you mentioned that because I feel like a lot of times people, I mean, everybody wants to have quicker results. Like that's just like, I think a byproduct of human nature, and people want, the quicker we can get it, people typically think the better. But like, I think at the same time, like having that patience and having that realistic like approach and that sustainable approach in the first place, it's like, yeah, somebody could lose 30 pounds in like 3 months if they wanted to make themselves like miserable and starving. And then, but then what happens is they did it unsustainably. And so they end up not being able to maintain that. And so then they end up gaining it all back. And it's like the net positive was either nothing or they even gained more weight than they did in the first place. And so I think like going about it from like a sustainable approach and like you said, really focusing on each step and not the whole entire staircase, because that could be, daunting sometimes, or maybe even a little demotivating. You're like, oh my gosh, I have so much left to do. I have so far to go. And it's like, nah, just like focus on today and focus on hitting that next little milestone. And over time, you're going to be, a year into your journey like we are right now and being like, damn, like look how far I've come. Like, this is crazy. And I think that that's just, if people could like embrace that mentality a little bit more in their journey, the earlier on, the better for sure. Like, the more people that would get to the place that you're at right now, which is, just being a badass and like kicking ass and taking names with your goals. Like, I mean, it's been pretty cool to see, you really like step into your power, especially like, earlier on, I feel like, you're a little hesitant in some ways, like with the plan, or maybe a little uneasy with some of like the, calorie suggestions and just things like that. And like, and I feel like we've really like, you've really embraced that mentality, and also the knowledge of it all too. I feel like I was saying earlier, like you've been, always eager to learn or wanting to learn, like, okay, like what's this next step? Like, hey, Austin, I'm probably going to need to take a little break here for a bit. What do I need to learn now? So that way I can like maintain this. And I'm like, hey, like I like if I, in a lot of ways, like I'm always like, I feel like sometimes I'm like a teacher sometimes with some of this stuff. And I love that. Like, I love teaching this stuff. So it's always been really cool to, be able to, to do that. So, so for you, like, you mentioned, focusing on the step, not the whole staircase. That's one, I think, really important, takeaway or golden nugget piece of advice for some people. But for anyone else that's like listening to this right now, like, thinking about starting their own journey that, was in, maybe a similar position like you were, what would you say to them, or what would you, if you could give any advice to, the version of you at the beginning of this journey, to help that version of you out, like with where you're at right now, like what would that advice be, or what would like a little golden nugget be for them?
I think what everyone says, just do it.
Yeah.
Um, like for me, I know a lot of people have like kids and, focus on non processed foods. I hate cooking, it's just me in the house. So I like quick and easy things. Like it's very hard to come by when I actually cook a full meal. So
Yeah.
it can't be hard. Like it doesn't have to be difficult. You don't have
Yeah.
to overthink it. Like there's
Yep.
just a few components and you really have to wait. Like I think Jen said this morning, like, is the food today worth your goal in the long run?
Yep.
Like,
Mm.
want
Yep.
instant satisfaction for a couple minutes
Yep.
or long term?
Yeah. I love that. I think that that's great. And I think one thing I want to touch on that you mentioned, like keeping it simple, like yeah, you can, because we teach flexible dining, it's like, yeah, you can eat out still. You can cook, extravagant meals and things like that, but it adds a bunch of other elements to it. And it can make it more complicated for me. Like I'm in the same boat. Like whenever I'm on like a weight loss phase, like I like to eat the same shit over and over and over again because it's
Yeah.
just easy. I don't have to think about it. It's just like it doesn't take up as much mental bandwidth. Like I can't even begin to tell you how many times, especially like before we went to Italy and once we got back, like how many times I've ate the same freaking taco bowl over and over and over. I like the way it tastes, and I'm gonna eat it until I get sick of it, and then I'm gonna find one more thing that I'm just gonna eat over and over again until it just, the more simple you can make it, have like, your 3 or 4 kind of go-to meals or whatever that help you hit your, your calories and your macros, and call it good kind of. And I think that just like, the simpler you can make your journey, the easier it's going to be on you, for sure. And then also what you said too, like, focusing on, what you mentioned earlier about like what Jen said, like with, is that food in the short term, like, that short-term satisfaction really worth the long-term, like greater goal. And that concept is called having like low recency. And it's one of the it's actually they've done studies on it, like psychologically, like what's like the most like important trait or factor that somebody can have that's going to predict whether or not they are going to be successful long term with their health and fitness or their weight loss goals. And that's low recency. And that's just valuing the long term vision of what you want, or the long term things that you're trying to achieve, more than that short term satisfaction, that thing that you're tempted to have in the now. And I mean, I think it speaks for itself. I mean, you've definitely, been, and the cool thing is it's a skill, right? And so you've been building that skill since we've been, working together. And I think, again, that's just there's all these traits, and they're just adding up to why, why you're this, like I probably said 8 times already, like badass client that's just, reaching her goals and making it a reality. And so it's not, there's kind of an equation to this. It's just like, consistency plus time plus a good game plan is going to equal success eventually. And I think that's why, you've been successful AF, because you've been consistent. So yeah. Congrats on all the amazing progress you've made. We're almost there too. It's pretty awesome. Like you're on the cusp. I mean, within the next couple of weeks to like a month, like you're probably going to be there, which is pretty dang cool. And so for you, like, I guess I didn't really plan on asking this question, but for you, like what would you say is your next like goal, like for yourself, once you reach that milestone, or once you reach that kind of 145? Like, do you have any plans of what you want to do next?
So my plan is to reverse diet after 145 so I can rebuild up my pool. And then my next goal is going to be 130.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
it's always fluid, so it could change if I hit some guy like this. So
yeah. Sweet.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, you're going to do awesome. You're going to crush it. And especially now, cause you know how to reverse diet properly, cause we've done it successfully. Yeah, one time for sure, maybe even like 1.5 times, I guess we've potentially done it, but, yeah. What was that?
It's harder than you think.
It is. I mean, you have to be diligent about it, but I mean, the outcome is like so worth it. I mean, if I have to be like tedious and diligent with my calories for, a month or two to be able to eat like, twice as much food at the same weight, like sign me up. I love food. Like that sounds so worth it to me. Like, and I mean, it is definitely worth it if somebody can maintain it. So, and you've already proven that you can. So it's gonna be a good time. You're gonna crush it. So, other than that, anything else before we end this?
I would just say, for anyone that isn't a client of Austin or already following the podcast, go find it, check it out. You will learn so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I love the podcast.
Yeah. And now you're on one too. So when people are like, what's your favorite episode of the podcast? You'd be like, well, the one that I'm on. So cool. Other than that, guys, we're going to end this here. And we're going to just, want to say thanks for coming on today. Appreciate you. And anybody who's listening to this, just know that, your goals are totally achievable. Like, it's absolutely doable. And, like she said, like start, just take the freaking plunge and bet on yourself and make it happen. Cause success like speed. And the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to start to see the results. So other than that, we'll end it on that. And I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye.